How did you make your husband's best friend realize that she can never take your spot? My husband Blake's best friend Jessica showed up at our honeymoon resort in Hawaii 3 days into our 2-week trip, claiming she'd booked the same place by total coincidence. Blake and I had saved for 2 years to afford this exclusive couples resort, and suddenly Jessica was standing at our breakfast table in a bikini saying, "What are the odds we picked the same hotel?" I knew immediately this wasn't coincidence because I'd kept our destination secret from everyone except immediate family. Blake had obviously told Jessica where we were going, and now she was here ruining our once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon. Blake actually seemed happy to see her, and invited her to sit with us for breakfast while I sat there stunned. Jessica ordered food on our room tab and started talking about how boring it was being here alone, and maybe we could all hang out together. She said she'd gone through a bad breakup and needed a vacation to clear her head, and wasn't it perfect that her best friend was here to support her? Blake immediately offered to include her in our activities, and I kicked him under the table, but he ignored me. Jessica spent the entire breakfast talking about their college memories and inside jokes while I might as well have been invisible. She kept touching Blake's arm and laughing at everything he said while complaining that some people didn't understand their special bond. That afternoon, Blake told me we should invite Jessica to our couples massage because she was lonely. I said absolutely not. This was our honeymoon and she needed to leave us alone. Blake said I was being cruel and Jessica was like a sister to him and had no one else. I reminded him that sisters don't show up uninvited to honeymoons, but he said I was reading too much into it. Jessica had already inserted herself into our dinner reservations by calling the restaurant and adding herself to our table. She showed up in a dress that barely covered anything and spent the meal reminiscing about spring break trips she'd taken with Blake before he met me. She kept saying, "Remember when we did this?" and "Remember when we went there?" while I sat there eating my overpriced fish in silence. Blake laughed at every story and added details while Jessica gave me fake smiles and said I was so lucky to have married her best friend. After dinner, Jessica suggested we all go to the beach bar, and Blake agreed before I could object. She got drunk and started crying about how Blake was the only man who ever understood her, and now she'd lost him to marriage. Blake spent 2 hours comforting her while I sat alone at our honeymoon watching my husband hold another woman who was sobbing into his chest. When I tried to leave, Blake asked where I was going and said Jessica needed us right now. I said Jessica needed to go back to her room and leave us alone, but Blake said I was heartless. The next morning, Jessica was at our breakfast table again wearing an even smaller bikini. She announced she'd booked the same snorkeling tour we had planned and wasn't that funny. Blake said it would be fun to have company, and I finally snapped. I told Jessica she needed to leave immediately and find a different hotel. She started crying and said I was threatened by their friendship and trying to control Blake. Blake actually defended her and said I was embarrassing him by causing a scene. He said Jessica had been his friend for 10 years, and I needed to accept that she was part of his life. I said not on our honeymoon she wasn't, but Blake said I was being unreasonable and jealous. That's when I decided if Blake wanted Jessica around so badly, then he could have her all to himself. I went back to our room and called the airline to change my flight to that evening. While Blake was at the pool with Jessica, I packed everything and checked out of the resort. I left Blake a note saying he could enjoy the rest of the honeymoon with the person he clearly preferred to spend it with. I flew home alone and went straight to my sister's house. Blake didn't even notice I was gone for 6 hours because he was too busy with Jessica. When he finally called, he was panicked and angry, asking how I could abandon our honeymoon. I said he'd already abandoned it when he let Jessica join every moment of what should have been our time. He said I was overreacting and Jessica was just lonely, but I said lonely people don't accidentally book the exact same resort as their best friend's honeymoon. Blake flew home 2 days later. I spent the first 2 days at my sister's house crying in her guest bedroom while she brought me tea and tissues. She kept telling me Blake's behavior was completely wrong and I did the right thing by leaving Hawaii. But lying there in her spare room with the floral wallpaper and creaky mattress, I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I overreacted. Maybe I should have pulled Blake aside and made him understand how hurt I was instead of just leaving. Maybe I gave up too fast on our honeymoon and our marriage. My sister caught me staring at my phone for the 100th time and sat down on the bed. She said Blake chose to prioritize Jessica over me on our honeymoon, and that wasn't something I caused by leaving. She reminded me that I tried talking to him multiple times and he defended Jessica every single time. But part of me still felt like maybe if I'd been calmer or explained it better, he would have understood. My phone kept buzzing with calls from Blake that I let go to voicemail. Each time it rang, my stomach twisted up and I wanted to answer, but I knew I needed him to actually think about what he did without me making it easier for him. Blake's voicemail started piling up and I listened to each one even though I didn't call back. The first few were panicked asking where I was and if I was safe. Then they shifted to angry messages saying I abandoned him and ruined our honeymoon by leaving. He kept saying Jessica was just going through a hard time and I was being cruel and jealous. But then the messages changed again and he started apologizing, saying he missed me and wanted to talk. The apologies were mixed with defenses though, like he'd say sorry for not listening, but then explain that Jessica really was lonely and needed support. One message said he understood I was upset, but I had to see that Jessica showing up wasn't her fault, because she didn't know it would bother me. Another said he was sorry for the whole situation,